morning, gentlemen of the media, and let me say a special good morning to those following us online. This morning, we have this press conference to deal with a few matters that are pertinent to life in St. Lucia as far as it relates to governance. As we know, the world over, we are experiencing high prices of commodities, and as a result of that kind of inflation, in our case in St. Lucia, we know that there is suffering being experienced by the average St. Lucian as a result of the high cost of commodities, especially groceries and food items. We have made several calls to the government to take action, to do something to ameliorate the suffering of St. Lucians in that regard. It is not acceptable, nor is it true that the government can do nothing about it. The Prime Minister keeps making excuses rather than seeking ways of addressing the problem. We have made a number of suggestions to the government as to what can be done. And if the government does not want to take ideas, recommendations, or suggestions from the opposition, then among their many high-paid consultants, certainly they can find someone who understands economics and who can find means and ways and advise them in taking measures to lower the cost of living in St. Lucia. To say that cost of living is not local, it's imported, is not entirely true. Because while the cost of many of the items that we import are beyond our control, when it gets to our shores, the imposition of the levies and taxes are a direct action of the government of St. Lucia. In light of the fact that already there is that inflation, global inflation, to ensure that St. Lucians are not further burdened by those high costs, government should not compound the problem by putting additional taxes on St. Lucian, such as the 2.5% levy that was recently imposed, which, as we have explained in the past, is a compounded tax, which makes food items especially, well, they said it does not apply to food items, but we have seen that, in fact, it does apply to food items. It makes goods and services more expensive and further compounds the high costs that St. Lucians have to pay. We are calling on the Prime Minister to recognize that, for example, the 2.5% levy was not imposed externally. It was imposed directly by his government. That can be a first step in bringing about some reprieve to the taxpayers, the citizens of St. Lucia, and he can begin by removing the 2.5%, as we have reiterated on several occasions. It is not acceptable, neither is it true that the government can do nothing. What the government needs to do is a review of their taxes and their fiscal policies to ensure that they provide some reprieve to St. Lucians. On another hand, we are hearing of late further rhetoric on the part of the government that we consider to be a further direct attack on the democracy that exists in St. Lucia as we know it. We know that Richard Frederick was brought into the Prime Minister's office, among other things, to be the Prime Minister's #1 most vociferous defender and advocate. And so he very often is the one who espouses the policies of the St. Lucia Labour Party. So when Richard Frederick publicly makes comments about altering our constitution, we know that he is speaking for the Prime Minister as an official in the Prime Minister's office, and that it is an intention of the St. Lucia Labour Party to make good on those sentiments that are being expressed. And so we are hearing that it is the intention of the government of St. Lucia, the St. Lucia Labour Party, to go to Parliament to change the constitution as it is, so as citizens of St. Lucia who were not born in this country cannot hold certain offices in this country. I want to point out that the architects of our Constitution certainly would have taken into consideration the fact that they are citizens of this country who were born out of this country. There are provisions for how you become a citizen and the rights of a citizen. I want to say that many of us St. Lucians, who are St. Lucian citizens, may not have been born in St. Lucia, but we have adopted St. Lucia as our country, and we have made our contributions, sterling contributions at that in some cases, for this country. Because, as I have said before, where you are born is not a choice that you can make. That is predominantly decided by your parents. However, the country you adopt as your country of citizenship is your choice. And those who have chosen to give their heart and soul to St. Lucia and to make their contribution in St. Lucia should have the rights of every citizen, and that we do not want to have two tiers of citizens where we have a first class and a second class citizen. I, for one, vehemently oppose any attempt to introduce such a measure. As a parent who has children born overseas, but those children have adopted and know St. Lucia as their home country. I would hate to think that they are any lesser of a St. Lucian as any other St. Lucian. And our Constitution clearly identifies people of St. Lucian parentage as St. Lucian. And so, for a government to target one individual and to go as far as to change the Constitution in targeting that individual, and we know it is no secret, that is aimed clearly at the leadership of the United Workers' Party, because we have the Honorable Alan Chasney, who was born in Martinique. And by the way, it is interesting to note the reason why he was born in Martinique. He was born in Martinique for medical reasons. And even today, St. Lucians find the need, because of our health care, the level that it is, to have to go overseas to get medical care. And if you're saying to a St. Lucian, if medical care is not available in St. Lucia, that a mother should risk her life and the life of her baby and remain in St. Lucia and not seek that medical care, then I do not know if barbaric is an adequate word to describe that kind of mentality. But clearly, a person in a situation like this, who comes back to St. Lucia, lived most of his life in St. Lucia, made his contribution to St. Lucia, as his heart in St. Lucia, and you want to say to that individual that he does not qualify as a St. Lucian to serve in this country, then clearly the desperation of the Labour Party has taken a new turn and has gone to a new level. You do not make laws to target individuals. In any civilized country, laws are made to serve all citizens of the country, not to target any individual citizen. And so it is unacceptable for the Labour Party just to preserve and secure power. And we know that all they are concerned about is protecting their victory. They campaigned for that victory, and ever since, they have not realized that they are now the government of St. Lucia, and they have a responsibility to govern. They continue to campaign and do everything within their power to try to hold on to power, as opposed to doing anything for the benefit of St. Lucians. Because as I mentioned earlier, St. Lucians are reeling under the high cost of living, and they are saying to St. Lucians there's nothing they can do. They have not looked at any possibility, but there's nothing they can do. This is their responsibility, not to try to twist and turn and do underhand maneuverings just to remain in office. And so I want to say that the United Workers' Party strongly objects to this, and I know most St. Lucians, because I know many St. Lucians, like myself, have children who were born overseas, and we want to know that our children are recognized as equals in this country of St. Lucia, that they have adopted as their home country, okay, where they have their heart and soul, and where they have grown up and been cultured and everything else. So we are calling on all St. Lucians to object to this, And should the government proceed with any action along that line, we are going to protest, and we call on all citizens of St. Lucia who treasure and value our democracy as we know it to come out and take a stand and let the government know that they cannot abuse the power that we have given to them in that manner for their own personal self-interest and aggrandizement. And so another measure that we have noticed creeping in is that the Labour Party is trying to give rise to the ugly picture of racism in St. Lucia. We are blessed in St. Lucia that in my lifetime, we have not had issues, significant issues related to racism in this country. We are a country that lives in harmony, irrespective of race. We have people of Indian descent. We have people of Amerindian descent, the Arawaks and the Caribs. We have people of European descent, the white people in St. Lucia. We have people who are of mixed race. And we all live in harmony in this country up to now. Unfortunately, the entity that is supposed to encourage and nurture that harmony, the government of the country, is now trying to sow a seed of discord, disharmony, and hatred among St. Lucians based on race. We have heard the repeated lines from the St. Lucia Labour Party about the political leader of the United Workers' Party, referring to him as a white man, making references to colonization and slavery. I think it is shameful and disgraceful because first and foremost, in his lineage, the Honorable Alan Chasney does not have any history of his family being involved in slavery. And even if he did, I would be the first to say to you that you cannot condemn an individual for the sins of their forefathers or their parents. It is where he stands we have to judge him on. It is on his character that we have to judge him. Let us not forget, while we condemn and we make a sweeping statement about white people, in the fight for freedom, in the fight for the abolition of slavery, there were white people in the forefront. So, do you regard and treat those people in the same way that you talk about the people who were responsible for slavery and colonization? Well, the United Workers' Party can proudly boast of their role in ensuring that we broke free from colonization. Alan Chasney chose that party as his party of choice. It was the St. Lucia Labour Party who fought our efforts for self-determination and independence. I just want to remind them of that history. And so, when you talk of Alan Chasney because of his skin color, you want to raise that issue that is not an issue for St. Lucians. I believe St. Lucians, and quite rightly so, are judging Alan Chasney on his vision, on his plans, his policies, his character, and what he intends to do for St. Lucia. Those are the criteria that we uphold. But when the St. Lucia Labour Party, again in all its hypocrisy, wishes to raise the race issue, I am forced to ask the question, how come they have a problem with Alan Chasney, who has one parent who is white, one parent who is black? That is a problem and is a race issue for them. Have they forgotten that in the recent past, Dr. Kenny Anthony was the leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia for at least 3 terms, and a parliamentarian in our House of Assembly for almost 30 years. He too has a white parent and a black parent. They don't have a problem with that. So is it double standard as usual that we are seeing from the St. Lucia Labour Party? I recall a few years ago when President Obama of the United States became the President of the United States. And let me first, before I go further, inform you that he has one white parent, one black parent. We all were jubilant and singing his praises and being so proud and happy that the US had its first black president. I ask the question, what is the difference between an Alan Chasney and a Barack Obama and a Dr. Kenny Anthony? And I'm not saying that any of them should be condemned because they are of mixed race. I'm not advocating that any of them should be judged on their race. Just as Kenny Anthony was Prime Minister of St. Lucia and leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party without objection, just as Obama was the President of the United States with our endorsement, although we didn't have any direct say in the matter, there is no reason why Alan Chasney cannot be accepted as who he is, a person of mixed race, a St. Lucian of mixed race, who can lead the country, because that, again, is not the criteria. If you look at the United Workers' Party, in our leadership, you have people of Indian descent, you have people of Negroid descent, you have people of Caucasian descent, you have people of mixed races, of all races. And so we embrace our diversity as a country. I think that is what has made our country strong. That is what has made our country remain harmonious. When you begin to advocate insularity and race issues as the St. Lucia Labour Party is given, that is sowing the seeds of hatred that will give rise to internal strife and war among us. This is the last thing we need in this country as a people. And we must take a stand and let the St. Lucia Labour Party know that this is unacceptable, and we are not going to allow them to perpetrate that kind of image for St. Lucia or that kind of lifestyle in St. Lucia. And so I strongly, on behalf of the United Workers' Party, condemn that move on the St. Lucia, part of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and we expect that the Prime Minister, as the leader of this country, come out and make a statement in condemnation of the indication that his party intends moving in that direction. He must give us the assurance that that is not so. Because already nothing is being done. Our freedom is already being compromised by the crime situation in this country. Our freedom is being compromised by the attacks of by elected members on citizens of this country. Our democracy as we know it is being compromised by the actions of even the Prime Minister himself, because let us not forget the Prime Minister went to a court of law, never mind expressions of separation of power. Okay? The Prime Minister went to a court of law, came out of the court of law, accompanied by the Speaker of the House, or his Attorney General rather, and made the statement that he went to the court to ensure that justice was done. Direct interference in the operations of the judiciary, which is supposed to be independent and separate from the executive, okay, and the legislature. And so when we have people in our leadership who ignores basic fundamental principles of our democracy, we cannot sit idly by and pretend that we do not see. Because as they erode the tenets of democracy, it makes it far easier when the time comes for individual attacks to be made on us as St. Lucians. And we must make a collective stance against it, lest we individually all perish as a result of it. I will stop at this point, and I have here with me the leader of the opposition, a representative from Mico South, the Honorable Alan Chasney, who wishes to make a comment on yet another egregious, painful topic that St. Lucians have to contend with, the issue of our ports being literally given away to GPH, Global Port Holding. I invite Honorable Alan Chasney to make his contribution.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Spider, and to our listeners. I just want to, before I make my presentation, reiterate and support what Mr. Montoute has just addressed. And maybe if I can add maybe some context to what he said. A lot of people would not have known about me is that I have an older sister. So before my parents got married, I think you were telling the story about when you were in New York, their love overcame them, and it produced a child. And that child is my sister Abigail, who was adopted. So before my mother had told my father about the situation, the child had already been adopted. And I got to meet her for the first time when I was 19 years of age. But the purpose of that is that the condition that my parents had was that rhesus negative, meaning my parents had opposite blood types. So, a lot of persons don't appreciate that when you used to have to take a blood test when you got married, people didn't understand why that was. But that was really to determine that condition. Technology has moved on so much so that today, once they understand that you are rhesus negative, that what they do is they give you a pill, and that resolves the issue. But back then, in the 60s, when I was born, every additional child the parents had, the situation would get progressively worse. So my parents had anticipated the difficulty that I was going to have, and that was the reason why I was born in Martinique. And I obtained a blood transfusion when I was born. Persons would also have not known that I had a brother, Russell, who was born, I think it was a year and a half after me. And like me, my mother went to Martinique to have the child. And sadly for my brother, he did not survive the blood transfusion. My younger sister, which more people are familiar with, Fiola, was born 3 years after that. And because they knew that it was going to be a difficult birth, that she was actually born in Boston. Boston is because where my father's family were at university. And my sister was the first child to have survived 7 blood transfusions. Now, I say that because that gives context to why I was born in St. Lucia. But on this matter with being born in St. Lucia, a lot of persons may not have appreciated, but the Constitution of St. Lucia has language in it to ensure that a person who is going to hold an office of either being an MP or a cabinet member or a prime minister, that their loyalty to St. Lucia is enshrined. And how does the Constitution do that? It says that you cannot obtain citizenship of another country by your own hand. It means that you can't apply to be a citizen and declare loyalty to that country and then turn around and want to hold office in St. Lucia. And it's for that reason that when I decided to enter the fray of politics, even though it wasn't elected and it was as a senator, I was a U.S. citizen. And I had applied to become a U.S. citizen. And I gave up that citizenship to be in compliance with the Constitution of St. Lucia. So you cannot serve in the realm of politics in this country and have mixed loyalties in that regard. I will say no more on the matter, and other than to say that I endorse the party's position on racism. There is no place for racism. I'm even more disgusted by some of the comments that are being made by my colleagues in support of me. And I won't even repeat what is being said. It's very sad. And I'm hoping that other St. Lucians will see it as distasteful as I do and provide their own commentary. But it's the typical answer that anytime anybody shows any independence of thought or contrary to what you think, the easiest thing to do is to go down the road of racism and to suggest why a person would be supporting what they appear to be a white man. And I have to tell you, I resent the fact that Richard Frederick would attempt to make me be the face of slavery, the face of colonialism, the face of plantocracy. My grandparents were black. My father is a black man. But I don't do what I do because of racism. I do what I do because I want to see every single St. Lucian prosper. I've accepted the fact that in the world today, the world is unfair. Nobody cares about what our past is. That we as a country, we as a government must do everything we can to provide the opportunities for every single St. Lucian to make it. And we can't be looking for excuses. I also want to say that the march that we're going to have on December 30th is a very important day. It's an opportunity for us to have a collective voice. Whether you are labor, independent, Flabo, it doesn't matter. The atrocities that this government is committing against the people of this country, the breach of our Constitution, the breaking of the laws, the lack of respect for our civil liberties is apparent for everyone. And there are a multitude of examples. So last week, I brought to the attention of the general public the GPH deal. And I specifically spoke the fact that GPH was going to be borrowing money from a local bank. We've now confirmed that that's true, that they're going to be borrowing money not only from the Bank of St. Lucia, but I believe from a consortium of other banks in St. Lucia and maybe even the region, I don't know. We've not been given that level of information. I also indicated that the chairman of Invest St. Lucia is also the deputy managing director of the Bank of St. Lucia. I say that because the optics are not good. I then also highlighted the fact that the same chairman, who is also of Invest St. Lucia, who is party to the deal, and is also the deputy managing director of the Bank of St. Lucia, and that surprisingly the Bank of St. Lucia is lending a foreign investor this money. And the question was, with what collateral is the entity using to obtain that loan? That his brother was offered the job to be a director of GPH. Now, I want to say that the minister's response, Hilaire's response, saying that he's proud of a St. Lucian obtaining the job. I'm also proud of any St. Lucian that can get an international job. But doesn't he see the optics again of all the capable young St. Lucians in St. Lucia? It just so happens that the brother of the chairman is hired? Really? Of all the St. Lucians? That's who got the job? And we're supposed to believe for a moment, no connection. He just happened to be the most capable person who had a job. He was the head of NIPRO, pretty good job. The minister then went on and accused me of bringing up these issues because I wanted to prevent foreign investors from coming to St. Lucia. I want to remind the minister that when I was in opposition, not only did I encourage, I participated in the development of Harbor Club. At no point can anyone point to any rhetoric on our behalf, my party's behalf, or me, to discourage foreign investors from coming to this country. And we certainly have not made statements that we have to go back on. So if we go to the archives, and I want to bring up two documents in particular. There are many more. On the 10th of July, 2019, the then opposition leader was making comments about Cabot. And he said, and I quote, "If Cabot has access to such sound security Why hasn't Cabot been able to raise the finances it requires for the project from its own base in Canada, where it is reputedly so successful? The Prime Minister does not seem to understand that foreign direct investment in a country means that a non-national or foreigner brings money into a country from overseas sources in order to invest in the country. Were those words said because that's what their policy is? Was their words said because there was genuine concern? Or was it just politics? Because here we are today, where GPH, very successful company, is coming to St. Lucia and borrowing $30 million US or $40 million US dollars to do an investment in St. Lucia. So if it has to live up to their definition of what foreign investment is, why didn't GPH bring its money from outside? Clearly it has resources on the outside. Why wouldn't it have not done that? I want to go on. Statement to the press on the NIC Cabot loan fiasco, they called it. Point 8 said, the NIC could easily have created an opportunity for the development of the land and could have potentially made close to $200 million in land sales alone. On the other hand, Cabot, by collecting just deposits alone from the first phase of the development, has raised $50 million in sales. Now, some may say that this sounds astonishing. However, if you visit Cabot's website, you would see where they have promoted the sale of lands. It goes on to say that the St. Lucia Labour Party supports true foreign direct investments that is inclusive, sustainable, and beneficial to St. Lucians. We will correct the wrongs of this and many other developments. We will secure free public access to our beaches and coastline, and we will protect our institutions like the NIC from prime ministers and ministers who may have their own personal agendas at heart and not that of the country. Finally, again, we will call on the uncaring and self-serving administration to call the elections now. So they're the ones who've brought up this analogy between Cabot and GPH. And I think that there's a lot to be learned between the comparisons between the two. So in the case of Cabot, this was 350 acres of land that was privately owned, that had been in receivership for almost 12 years because of the recession that took place. So it means at any point, anyone could have gone to the bank and purchased that property. Cabot came along, and Cabot was an experienced company. Cabot had built golf courses and done real estate developments in other parts of the world, and had done so at the highest standard in its class, meaning that it was building the best golf courses in the world. 3 of their golf courses were already in the top 100 of the world by the time they came to St. Lucia. NIC, which invests money to what? To help the pensioners by generating a higher return on their investment so that they can continue to pay. NIC had been investing money in the stock exchange. And my government encouraged NIC to build a land bank in St. Lucia. And when they went to purchase the property from the Bank of Nova Scotia, and if you remember, the Bank of Nova Scotia was leaving St. Lucia, so they were keen on getting rid of their assets, said, well, there was a Canadian company that was interested. And I put them, as Prime Minister, I put the two together. And NIC had 2 options: to become a joint venture investor with Cabot, or to provide Cabot with a loan. Because Cabot has a track record of wanting to have local institutional investment in their assets. They feel that that's an important part of who they are. NIC chose the less riskier way and borrowed and lent them the money, and got as security for the business the land. The land was valued at 90 million EC dollars, about 30 million US dollars, just over 30 million US dollars. And they lent them 10 million US dollars. So that means that if anything went wrong, NIC would have obtained a 30 million US dollar asset to cover their $10 million loan. We now have the benefit of hindsight. This idea that there were persons with the requisite expertise here to have made that land into what it is, meaning a world-class golf course. And it's the golf course that adds the value to the real estate development. Cabot came out, Golf Magazine came out, and has ranked St. Lucia's golf course number 76 in the world. We're the only second golf course in the Caribbean, the entire Caribbean, to be on that list. The other one is one in the Dominican Republic, the Teeth of the Dog. And in fact, the Teeth of the Dog is ranked 75 and we're ranked 76. And Cabot has not even had 1 year of operations. And it's because of that ranking and having Ben Crenshaw and the people associated to Cabot is why the demand for Cabot is so high. And the benefit to St. Lucians ultimately will be the construction of over 150 villas. So if you go to Windjammer Landing and you see all those villas, very similar. The difference is they're all going to be privately owned by high net worth, high visible individuals, which is going to create even more of an attraction for St. Lucia. I hear people talk about menial jobs. I want you to go and interview the persons who are working in villas and hear how menial it is. Villa managers who are making over $15,000 a month. Chefs who are making over $10,000 a month. Technicians. The list goes on and on. And yes, there are housekeepers who are extremely well paid. So just think of the economic impact. In fact, it's so great that the government today is boasting about the residences at Cabot. Now, what is the comparison with GPH? GPH is coming in to develop our port. But we already had an entity that was responsible for developing our port in St. Lucia. And that entity is called SLASPA. SLASPA has been developing our airports and our seaports for over 50, 60 years and have done so successfully. In fact, just in 2016, SLASPA expanded the port berthing facility at Point Seraphin to bring in the quantum class. They funded it, they identified the contractor, they oversaw it, everything was done, and the loan was being paid. So unlike Cabot, where there was no local expertise in developing that kind of high-end golf facility, today with GPH, there is a person who does that. There is an entity that does that and has been doing it successfully. So what is the specialty that GPH is bringing to the table? They're a middleman. They don't own cruise ships. They're coming in to do what? To develop and manage the port. That's exactly what SLASPA does. And the issue that we have with the deal is that it's a gift. Why would you lease our port to GPH for 40 years and give them all of the revenue? So when they tell you, oh, well, GPH is taking over the loan of SLASPA, yes, but they're also taking over the revenue that had been paying the loan. That's like you having a little apartment downstairs, and the rent from the apartment downstairs is what you're using to pay the home mortgage. And a man comes and tells you, I'm going to take over your home, and I'm going to take over your apartment. It means you have no income and no place to live. And listen to the numbers. that GPH is going to invest $40 million on expanding the port in Castries, on fixing up Banans and the waterfront in Soufrière. But in turn, they're going to generate, conservatively, over $400 million in revenue. Why? What's the added value? What is it that's so special about GPH? What is it that they're doing that SLASPA cannot do? And what makes it worse is that the one thing that GPH is supposed to do is to raise the fees that they're going to get, but they're the ones collecting all the fees. When I knew before we left office that the cruise lines had already agreed in principle to raise those fees, there was no need for GPH. Also, there is no logic in expanding the port facilities in Castries. Why would you want to bring a 7,500 passenger ship into Castries along with other ships? So that means on a one day you might have 12,000 passengers in Castries. The road between here and Gros Islet is already congested. Where are the tours that you're going to be selling? And most of the tours are in the south. And in fact, the opportunity to grow tours is more in the south. And that's why we were investing in the West Coast Road. United Workers' Party's vision was fix up the quality of Castries. Fix up the Castries market. Make it the best attraction in St. Lucia. Break down the Printry building and the Parliament and that old courthouse and make that into a park. Provide incentives for businesses to fix up their businesses. Pedestrianize the city to encourage people to come there. And by building the Marriott Courtyard Hotel with a conference facility, taking the container ports out of Port Castries and sending them to cul-de-sac, and using the land at the old Prince Alfred Basin to put a convention facility and a hotel. Why? Because you have an airport that's right next to Castries. There's no capital city in the southern part of the Caribbean where you can arrive at the airport and in 3 minutes be at your convention hotel. And those persons who are going to stay at the Marriott Courtyard, and those persons that would stay at any new hotel facilities in Castries at nighttime are in Castries. You're creating now life after dark. So the same thing you see taking place at Rodney Bay with restaurants and bars and activities and shops is what you want to see downtown Castries, to bring back the value and the activity and the life of Castries. And think of the Castries market not only being open during the day, but being open at nighttime. And that not only are you selling fresh produce, but you have small restaurants, fresh food in an authentic St. Lucian environment. That was what was started in 2007 in what we call the Vision Plan, the Quadrant Economic Plan. All the plans are there. Improve the quality of Castries, add a new element to Castries, and that by putting the cruise ship port in Vieux-Fort, you now bring in home porting. Because the airport will be right next to where the cruise ship terminal is. And it means we collect $100 on every passenger who comes into St. Lucia to catch a cruise ship. Plus the opportunity for people to stay in St. Lucia either pre or post. I say that to you because it's not only the revenue that we're giving up, meaning $400 million of revenue over the next 40 years. But it's the opportunity to grow Vieux-Fort, because it's our understanding, and certainly when I was in discussions with GPH was not keen on doing Vieux-Fort because they would not get the same level of return. They would have to make almost $100 million investment to make that port work. And we went out and we got whom? Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and MSC, the three largest cruise ship companies, to come in to invest in that facility. And they're the ones who own the boats. They're the ones who have the opportunity to make the long-term commitment that we require to make that port work. And we would significantly differentiate ourselves to everybody else in the southern part of the Caribbean. And now all of a sudden, you have lots of land and lots of opportunity to grow tours because the shopping on board is getting too good. Between the shopping improvement in the shopping on the ships and online shopping, duty-free shopping is not what it was before. The benefit of the cruise ships coming here are attractions. That's what they cannot build on those ships. No matter how big they make them, they cannot. They're trying. You see that they have little roller coasters and water slides and all kinds of stuff. They're trying, but it could never replace the kinds of attractions that we can build on the destinations. So one, Hilaire, in responding, has not in any way convinced me, or should have convinced anybody in St. Lucia, that they have a plan. What was the logical reason for doing the investment in the first place? This seems like a sweetheart deal. Two, I'm sad that he would not see the optics of his chairman, who is his best friend, who is also the deputy managing director of the bank, and that his brother getting the job. Now, if it was just that, maybe we could, okay, maybe it was by chance. But we know that Bebe's girlfriend, Lisa, has also gotten a job to do the public relations. And then we also now know that Thaddeus Antoine, who is, again, Ernest's lawyer, who is now his chosen person to be chairman of the Tourism Authority, and who we understand that every time a new investor or all investors come here, that they're encouraged to use his legal services. That of all the lawyers in St. Lucia, Thaddeus Antoine is the lawyer for GPH. Coincidence? We all should rest well at night? That's what I'm saying. So again, if you want to make the comparison to Cabot, we now have the benefit of hindsight. That Cabot did what they said they were going to do. They paid back the money. Isn't that what they're supposed to do? And sadly, they paid it back prematurely, and NIC and the pensioners of NIC lost money. Now, why are we concerned? Because the Bank of St. Lucia is owned by whom? By us. And there's too much of an incestuous relationship that's taking place, and we ought to be concerned. And this is coming from a government that was in opposition and made all kinds of allegations of wrongdoing, who said that foreign investors should be bringing their own money. But here it is, we've invited a foreign investor into St. Lucia, who not only is not bringing their own money, is not bringing any new expertise that did not exist in St. Lucia. So if you didn't want SLASPA to do it, why wouldn't you put together a consortium of locals and allow them to do the deal and have access to $400 million of revenue? You want to talk about patrimony? What's not more important to the patrimony of St. Lucia than our ports? What is not more important than that? So, Hilaire's response yesterday is actually very troubling because it points to a naivety or a deliberate intention to fool all of us. And it makes me believe, and should make all of you believe, there's something more to it. It's no different than the Bonanza land. You see, and all this starts coming together. Why would you have sold the Bonanza land for $2.7 million? And then tell us that SLASPA does not have the capacity or the wherewithal to develop our port? And you lease it out to somebody, a foreigner, for 40 years? And then that foreigner now is also going to be selecting the taxi drivers? Going to be selecting who is going to have shops? You're no longer paying rent to SLASPA. You're paying rent to them. So you've completely undermined SLASPA, a major revenue source, an activity for SLASPA to justify and help pay the bills at SLASPA. You've now taken that away. And you want us to believe it's for good reason, and then it turns around, and then all of your friends and family are the ones who are benefiting on the sides? And that's a fact. The lawyer, PR, and directors, and you want to tell us, oh, that you're proud of a solution? Was the position advertised? Did all solutions, all young, capable solutions, have equal access to those jobs? So, the reason for our march, again, is these kind of egregious breaches that are taking place, whether it's the Banan's land, whether it's a minister admitting that he's getting information from police officers and targeting solution citizens, whether it's the promise that they were going to improve things that are not, whether it's putting a tax on, that there's no justification for the tax. You know, I saw a bill today, and what was interested in the bill, it said that it was the price of the product plus 15.5%, which is what we've all been alluding to. It's a compounded tax. It's worse than having increased the VAT to 15. We're now paying 15.5% at a time when people are suffering in this country. So I'm really encouraging St. Lucians to put our collective voices together, to take a stand against this government and how they are lying. They've lost the confidence of the people of St. Lucia. 70% of the St. Lucians believe this country is heading in the wrong direction. 70%. And it's time that we not just speak about these things in our own home or for our friends, but we have a presence. It's only through our collective action that we can say no, and say that no means no to this government. That's all they're going to understand. And I think that we have to play our part in democracy, because this is a government intent on destroying our democracy and destroying the rule of law, and suppressing and targeting, victimizing people. And we're seeing the level of nepotism that's now taking place in this country, and it's scary. So I want to thank everybody for the opportunity, and I'm certainly avail myself to any questions that the media may have.
Question. For you, Mr. Shasta. The cruise season has opened. We had a pretty slow summer and a slow start to what's supposed to be the peak season. Any comments on that?
I can only speculate as to what I'm seeing taking place. St. Lucia was what we called a marquee destination in the South. No cruise ship tour would not include a stop in St. Lucia because of the quality of our product and the variety of tours that we've had. I've seen that both Dominica, St. Vincent in particular, that the number of trips that they're getting has increased significantly. I know that the cruise lines are not going to say so, but I know that they've had difficulties with a GPH kind of deal. It's for the same reasons that we've said. You inserted a middleman that's adding cost to a very price-sensitive industry. Yeah? And so I don't know if it's as a result that the cruise lines have decided to reduce their dependence on St. Lucia and start growing some of the other destinations. I also do know that certainly earlier, a year or so ago, the cost of fuel had gone up, and therefore the southern tours became less attractive. And we also are very heavily dependent on Puerto Rico. GPH, my understanding is, may have won that bid for Puerto Rico. I know it's a hotly contested issue. But until Puerto Rico gets its act together, the opportunity for us to grow is going to be limited. And this is why the greatest opportunity for us to grow are the European ships. And that's why home porting is so important. The European ships don't want to go to U.S. ports because of the U.S. immigration policies. And so they want to come into independent countries like ourselves, Antigua, St. Lucia, Barbados. And there was, I think, a big opportunity, there's still a very big opportunity for us to grow that side of the market and grow more of our European side of the market. But I like you, I'm very worried by the numbers that I'm seeing, the size of the ships that are coming in, the numbers of passengers that are coming in. And when you hear numbers like in the Bahamas where you're seeing almost 40%, 50% growth in numbers, you have an expansion by the Dominican Republic in Puerto Plata and some new ports that they're putting in. There's a lot of competition on the horizon. And I'm not so sure that we're heading in the right direction.
Additionally, concerning GPH, the logic, I think Mr. Hille, as well as a couple other ministers had, is that GPH has had experience in other parts of the world developing ports. So that's why they use them instead of SLASPA. Comment on that.
But that's what SLASPA was built for. Right? I mean, SLASPA has been successfully developing our ports. We were number one. The numbers speak for itself. I remember going on tour, and again, I like GPH, and I think they're great people. But the question I kept on asking in the meeting, what's the added value? What are we getting? What's the people of St. Lucia getting from this deal? And yes, they did some innovative things, but you can go and see what the innovative things are. So for instance, where Place Carénage is and the customs, right, is that should we have anything there? What should be the experience when people come off the ship? It should be to be able to see the city. Right? Now, those are things that were accounted for in our vision plan and are outside the purview of the port. Birthing is birthing. Right? The expertise to build additional berths and strengthen our berths is here. Now, what makes matters worse is you would have thought, okay, well, maybe the one thing they could bring to the table was money, right? But if in fact they're going to borrow the money locally, why didn't we just organize for SLASPA to have borrowed the money locally? Why? And who's the ultimate shareholder in SLASPA? Not the people of St. Lucia? Are people of St. Lucia shareholders in GPH? And what say did the people of St. Lucia have in any excess money that GPH had, right? The money goes into Bananes, the money is going into Soufriere. Is that how the people of St. Lucia would have wanted the money to be spent? Who's making those decisions? And then you speak about DSH. You made all kinds of allegations that DSH was using CIP monies and they were not bringing their own money to the table. You've been in government for 2.5 years. You cannot show one passport that was sold by DSH on CIP and money that went in, because it never happened. All the money that went into the horse racing track was Mr. Aking's own money. We all have a problem with that. And you want to come now and convince me that you give some investor a sweetheart deal of which he's going to turn around and use the revenue stream, the revenue that we are generating, to build his own business, and you're going to pay him 10 times the amount of money because he's making an investment of $40 million and he's getting a return of $400 million. And that's supposed to be a good deal for all of us? And then you turn around and tell people, oh, the GPH deal is the best deal that St. Lucia's ever had? Well, maybe from your perspective, because maybe your best friend's brother is the one getting the job. Maybe it's your best friend and your lawyer who's becoming the lawyer, and you're seeing people around your circle, your friend, your family circle, right? That are benefiting. I don't know. You have to tell us. I'm asking the question. You tell us. Why do you think it's the best deal? Because on paper, it's not a good deal for the people of St. Lucia. It lacks vision. I think it's going to backfire when you put that number of people into Castries. And I see the quality of the Castries product going the opposite way, not improving. And you all said that you didn't like the Marriott Courtyard. I see the Marriott Court proceeding, and now you're bragging about Marriott Courtyard. You didn't like Cabot, now you're bragging about Cabot. You didn't like Galaxy, now you like Galaxy. Okay, you didn't like Saber Shah deal, the Hyatt, now you're bragging about the Hyatt deal. Okay? There's nothing new that this government has brought into it, but exactly what they did to village tourism. They renamed it to community tourism, and then they want to say that it's theirs. This country was on a great trajectory. We need foreign direct investment into St. Lucia. You cannot wait to get into government and now recognize you need foreign direct investment, that you have to go out and get white people to come to your hotels, and you have to look at white investors coming to your country, and all of a sudden change your attitude. You don't get the privilege to do that. That's called hypocrisy. And there's nothing genuine about what you're doing. And there's no vision about what you want to do. And there's no sense of urgency. And that is why coming out to march on November 30th to send a strong message to this government. Right? And enough is enough. We all have to stand up and say no. And when we say no, we mean no. No to the 2.5% tax. Why should we have to tell you that? You tell me that you care about the people? You don't know that the 2.5% tax is contributing to inflation in our country? You can't see that for yourself? You can't see the state of the roads? You need people to come and tell you, and when people come and tell you, you criticize them? Crime? The healthcare system? The education system? The sporting fraternity in our country? But it's only things that it seems that your family are involved in that you seem to care about. You want to go and spend $12 million on a jazz festival? For what? The winter's gone by, telling me, the summer's gone by, telling me how this jazz festival benefited us this summer. It's the worst summer that we've ever had. You cannot even come out and admit that and then tell us you're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. I know right now where we're going, the trajectory we're on, we'll have the same bad summer next summer. Because what caused the bad summer in the first place, you're not addressing. St. Jude's, it's a disgrace. HIA Airport. The airport was funded, the designs were done, the work had already started. You have stopped it. You cannot explain anything. You told us about that there was corruption. You said that there was a Panama account. There was no Panama account. Where is the corruption? Where's the corruption on the Rodney Bay Road? In fact, I have to start asking the question, right? Do they know something I don't know? Why would you stop a construction project that had a fixed price of $15 million? The contractor backs out legally. You now have to pay him for the works that were done. Your own estimates show that that work that he did was already worth $22 million. So that means you have to pay him $22 million and now go and find another contractor to finish the work that he would have already done for the $15 million. St. Lucians, wake up. This government does not have the capacity to govern this country. This government is interested in themselves and their clique, the mafia around them. We see it every day. And anytime you will question them on any one of these things, you become the enemy of the state. The enemies of the state are them. And the only way that we can stand up to a bully is to stand up to them and to say no. And when we say no, we mean no.
Final question from me. The loan agreement, well, with Saudi Arabia, right? We know that Saudi Arabia has had its own issues, its own political issues in the past, human rights accusations at least. Do you believe that this relationship is a good one for the country? Obviously, the opposition has its issues with the loan that was taken, but do you believe that the relationship with Saudi Arabia is a good one for the country?
I think many other countries have answered that question. You know, whatever concerns that persons may have been brought up, and there are several, about Saudi Arabia. America continues to work with them. All of our Western partners continue to work with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a major economic force. I think, if not mistaken, they passed $1 trillion GDP, right? And that I think that you've seen a lot of progress in Saudi Arabia. I mean, even at the tourism world travel market this year, they had the largest stand. So, you know, they're becoming a lot more aggressive in the world. So I welcome the opportunity for them to create a development fund. But I believe that with their expertise in managing a sovereign fund in Saudi Arabia, that even though the government has identified St. Jude's, the old St. Jude's, there's still going to be standards that they're going to be expected to produce. And I think that that's why there's been a delay in moving forward. My understanding is that they still have not completed a design, okay? And they still have not been able to put a final costing to what the project is going to cost. That's the truth. We have wasted 2.5 years. I mean, any goodwill that this government would have hoped to have obtained on the St. Jude's Hospital has been lost. They're the ones who said, chemical, some paint and some tiles, and you can open it up in a couple of months, $30 million. Well, a couple of months have gone by, and they've passed spending $30 million a long time ago. They passed that mark a long time ago, and we're no closer to moving into the hospital. The FDL report has been vindicated. That is the only real report that we've had. It cost you $1 million. You paid for a proper report to have professionals do the report. And the report told you, at minimum, it would cost you $100 million to complete. But that's only after you rectify all the problems at St. Jude's. And the problems are significant. Plumbing, electrical, material, the physical space that you have. And then more importantly, how do you get past the fact that you have 26 different buildings? Who builds a hospital like that? And meanwhile, what makes it worse is my government had, in fact, the more difficult task. After being faced with that problem, was to actually start the process of a new hospital. I remember the day that I went in and met with the staff at St. Jude's, at the stadium. A lot of people cried. I cried. Because there was no way that I could guarantee them that we were going to be able to move in a couple of months. And if you remember, we brought all of them. Over 150 people. We went and spent the day there. They got to see it for themselves. And they were angry. So don't come and tell me that there was no consultation. Every attempt was made to move into that building. And when we realized we could not, we had the difficult task of starting from afresh and building a building specifically to be a hospital, a modern day hospital. You want to come and tell the people of St. Lucia, that was wrong, and it cannot be finished, and there's all kinds of problems. You've not been able to identify any of the problems. The only problem is you. And you were biased from the beginning because you said to the committee, you want a plan on how to move into the old building. You never asked them to give you a comparison. But these are the kinds of things that make me angry. Make me angry because when we get back into government, we have to go back and start everything again. Look how much time we've lost on this experiment called Philip Peer. All because he said what? He's the most prepared. And you know, St. Lucians have a sense of sympathy, empathy in them, a kindness. And I'm sure that influenced some people in how they voted. And that's fine. I'm not angry about that. What I'm angry about is that this government made a lot of promises, had made a lot of allegations about our policies. And today you're coming into office, all you're doing is renaming the policies, but it's the same policies. And you're not even doing them half as well. That's my problem. Not even doing them half as well. And we're going down the wrong track, and it's for all St. Lucians to come out on November 30th and collectively say no. Ask this government to restart and go back to what we're accustomed to: good governance, respecting our democracy, respecting the rule of law, and respecting our civil rights.
Well, before we end, I have a question that I was asked to pose to the government, and that is it true that the elderly getting NIC pension will not qualify for the government health care plan for 80-year-olds? That is a question for the government, and we're hoping that they can clarify that matter. Of course, we are here to bring the issues to light and to hold the government accountable, so we are asking the questions. I just want to reiterate some of what the political leader has already said. St. Lucians, do not believe for a moment that you have no options until 2026, which is the due date for elections. We have many options at our disposal. I know that St. Lucians are reeling under the high cost of living, and that we are not accepting that the government cannot do something about it to relieve our burden and give us some reprieve. So I'm calling on those of you who are feeling that pressure to come out on the 30th of November and let your voices be heard. Take a stand and let the government know how you feel about it. We are calling on St. Lucians who are concerned about the jeopardy that their freedom has been put under by criminals who have overrun this country, the high number of homicides that we're experiencing. And I said it much earlier in the year that we are on course for setting another record. Because don't forget, last year we set a new record of the number of homicides that we experienced under this government. We are looking at a year where we may very well surpass it. We are well on track for that. I know there are many St. Lucians who are concerned about this. You need to come, take a stand, and let your voices be heard. I know there are many of you who are concerned about the GPH project, the giving away of our ports for the next 40 years, and the abdication of duty by the government to make policy on behalf of the people of St. Lucia, allowing a foreign company to have jurisdiction over our future and to determine that nothing will be done to the ports in Vieux-Fort for the next 40 years. We cannot accept that, especially people from the South. Knowing the plans that we had for the South, knowing the potential of the South, you need to come out, take a stand, let the government hear your voice and get to know your position. There are a number of issues when it comes to health care. That decision, that myopic political partisan position that was taken to go back to the old St. Jude's, a building that was not designed and built for the purpose of being a hospital. We have, from my information, about 25 scattered buildings all over the place, as opposed to a building that was specifically designed as a modern hospital to accommodate the modern facilities and equipment of a hospital with nothing less a helipad. We have to take a stand on that and let it be known. The fact that our other health facilities are in such a deplorable situation where they cannot even provide basic medication, we have to let the government know how we feel about that. The attempt by the government to overrun our democratic principles and policies and institutions in this country, the attack by government ministers on any individual who dare to speak up or criticize any government policy, we have to take a stand on that. The Prime Minister's refusal to speak on salient, important, critical issues in this country, who will look at St. Lucians and say to them that he does not know about matters that he is directly responsible for, that will look at St. Lucians and say matters of national interest and concern is not their business. That is unacceptable, and we must let the government know that we are not going to stand for it. So I'm calling on all of you St. Lucians, whether it be because you are reeling under the 2.5% levy that was imposed on you, making cost of living even worse, causing more inflation in St. Lucia. Whatever your reason, come out and let your voices be heard. We do not want to divide ourselves. We want to unite. We have a government that is trying to divide the country. We are not going to stand for that. Okay? We all are St. Lucians, and all of us St. Lucians must take a stand. And I do not want to know that the person affected by the high cost of living has to stand on his own by himself. The person affected by the bad roads in St. Lucia have to take a stand by himself, because when we are fragmented, we do not have as much power. Let the government know where the power lies. The power lies with the people of St. Lucia. So we're calling on all the people of St. Lucia to come out, whether it be roads, high prices, imposition of taxes, poor health conditions, no plan by the government, no answers from the government, the attack on democracy in this country, crime in this country, okay? The sale of our patrimony, as with the GPH deal, the Banan's land. There are many, many issues that we have to take a stand against. And so we have to come out and let it be known that we are not pleased with the direction that they're taking our country. And remember, you cannot wait until the next general election. By then, it will be too late. We will not have a country to fight for. Let us take a stand now while there is still something to fight for. So we invite all St. Lucians on November 30th to come out and be part of that march. Thank you.